Welcome. This is a conversation. It's a conversation that you're invited to. We're going to have in the studio, and we're going to talk together about the importance of stories. We say story matters, which means your story matters, our story matters, everyone's story matters. It's a rich world full of stories and full of life. And so today we're very happy to have Bud Leeds, and he has brought along his clarinet, which says that music is an enriching and just marvelous part of this whole life and stories. And so Bud has done so many things. If we started to list them, he can tell you some pieces of the story of his life. He's been associated with Middlebury College and this community for a number of years and served as vice president here. And there's just a lot of things about Bud that we could share, and we talked about we may have to have volume two. We come at this again a second time, and maybe a third. That'd be good. So, Bud, I asked you the question about your earliest song. Can you tell me that story and tell the folks that story?
The first song I ever remember playing was Stardust, which is not the simplest song I could have started with, but that was years before I had a clarinet. I went into my mother's and father's bedroom, and there was an interesting object on my mother's dresser, and I looked at it, and it was what we would call, well, in those days they called a powder box. And I lifted the top off, and it was it started playing this beautiful song. So the first song I ever played, I played by lifting up the lid of a music box and played it. It was "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes" was the name of the song.
Why don't you take us there?
Since then, I've learned to try to play it on the clarinet. It's in three flats, and then the bridge goes into, I think, 5 sharps, which means 7 sharps. I'm not sure there are 7 sharps, but I'm going to try it. I think it sounded better on the music box.
No, it sounded just fine. Why do you think that was such from the standpoint of the era, the time, why was that such a...
It was. Well, you and I lived in the same times, and we know what an impact Jerome Kern had on people. I think you and your dear wife had a special song, "All the Things You Are," as I recall, and that story of it was an inspiring story about people discovering love of one another and that sort of thing.
And now it's connected to a project that you're involved with. Can you?
Well, these days, yeah,
talk about that?
Right here in Middlebury, there is a chap by the name of Sam Garnaccia who linked me to a project that involved Mary Evelyn Tucker down at Yale and a number of people in Princeton, and the theme for a movie, for a series of lectures and talks and visits, and this oratorio that Sam Ganaccia wrote is Journey of the Universe, and that's something that I think is the principal theme of it is that there was the Big Bang, and scientists these days seem to agree that there was a Big Bang between 13 and 14 billion years ago, and that everything that is in the whole universe, billions of galaxies, billions of stars within those galaxies, and occasional planets surrounding some of those stars, like our planet Earth, everything that we know in our lives, that we can see in the universe, and that we can experience in our own lives here, are all they're all stardust. We are stardust. Human beings, as derivatives of this Big Bang and all that ever was made, are particles of that creation, and the thing that separates us, we think, from everything else that is that we are part of that process, but we are conscious of being part of that process. And so I don't think this is what Hoagy Carmichael had in mind, but when he wrote Stardust, but it's a theme that with my mother and dad we used to talk a lot about that song, but in this connection, in this broader connection.
Were your parents musicians?
My dad, my mother sang a lot, and she really enjoyed singing. My dad was a violinist, and he was captain of his baseball team, but he worked for the New Jersey Bell Telephone Company, and we did a lot of scientific experiments together with theories we tested out. One of them took me to Westinghouse Science Talent Search as a youngster, before I ever went to college or anything. And my dad loved to play his violin, and we had a nice hallway in our house, upstairs, downstairs, and he would go out there and play his violin, and I would try to play some harmony along with him on the clarinet when I finally did get the clarinet when I was 10 years old.
Who became the one who introduced you to the clarinet?
Actually, Santa Claus.
Okay.
Santa Claus brought me a clarinet.
You always count on Santa Claus.
Well, my dad had told me that he had always wanted to play the clarinet, and but he was violin, and he was wonderful. He was concert master in the high school, as well as captain of the baseball team. But he always wanted to. So there must be a connection there somehow, because Santa Claus brought me a clarinet one year for Christmas. And
you've been playing it ever since?
I've been playing it ever since I was 10 years old. But you also
played saxophone, right?
Well, there was a period of time there when if you wanted to play with jazz musicians, you kind of needed to be what they call a doubler. And so I got an alto sax and learned to play that along with Bob Chester's band and some of the other bands that were like intermission bands on the steel pier when the big boys were playing out there.
Right. So when you've gone into a band and all that brings you support and experience and practice, what would be one of those band songs that would really capture you? Like if someone said, "Play us something," what would they?
Yeah. Well, at home, my dad really leaned toward Dixieland, so I like to play in small groups and do some Dixieland music. I think the first song he ever wanted to play with me was one that I've since played many times in church, but in other occasions too. "Closer Walk" was one of the ones there that I played.
Why don't you play the "Closer Walk" now and get us into that song?
then we would jazz it up a little bit.
All right.
As to the bigger songs and the ones that kind of fit in with that whole Stardust theme,
Right.
that was one that we would play. And it sounds a lot better with a big band than it sounds with
No, it sounds good.
with a clarinet just playing by itself.
And then what would often follow that, particularly when you went into the funeral services, would be when the saints go marching in.
Yep, we would do that. We keep modulating and going to that. Yeah. And New Orleans funeral kind of thing too.
Mm-hmm. Have you done some New Orleans funerals?
Yeah. Well, yes. If you're playing a Dixieland band and you live on the west coast of Florida, there's a lot of, and I work frequently in my volunteer life. I would work with hospice, and so we would play a lot of memorial services every few months for all the people in hospice who had passed in that period of time. And if you play an instrument and just have instrumental music without the words, then you don't seem to be proselytizing any particular flavor of religion. And so we would play the songs, but people wouldn't sing them, or in their own minds they could sing whatever words they wanted.
But there is a song that you really like, and can I read that poem? And
Go,
then you
yes.
play the music. It's called My Mother's Eyes. One bright and guiding light that taught me right from wrong, wrong from right, I found in my mother's eyes. Those baby tales she told me, that road all paved with gold, I found in my mother's eyes. Just like a wandering sparrow, one lonely soul, I walked the straight and narrow to reach my goal. God's gift sent from above, a real unselfish love I found in my mother's eyes. You want to play that for us?
turn that into a medley, Len, I couldn't help but think, when I think of my mother, and at her funeral, I played with a mutual friend that we have. We played a little Mozart. We played A Closer Walk. But the song that I remember that really fits there was Si tu vois ma mère, If You See My Mother. And a musician lost his mother and was talking to another musician who was getting ready to take the next step in his eternal journey. And so, Si tu vois ma mère, If You See My Mother. So that's the one I slipped in.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's such an expressive instrument, the clarinet, and you play it so well. And
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. And I love the fact that you and my wife work on music together. And,
I love it.
And she puts it's helped her move from being a classically trained organist to I don't know where.
We're getting her ready for the nightclub circuit or something.
For the nightclub circuit. If someone said to you, "Play your favorite song," what so you play songs all the time, and you pick up and you improvise, and you connect to the moment and to the people.
Well, everyone asks for Closer Walk. The one that is the most requested song is one that fits right in with the Journey of the Universe theme, which is Stardust, and it is it I don't think it's what Hoagie Carmichael had in mind, but that's the theme. Shall I try that one?
Do that. That's nice. That is nice. I bet you've played the clarinet in some unusual sets of circumstances, right? Places where you wouldn't ordinarily expect.
Well, yeah.
Can you tell us a story about?
I was teaching in the summers of '66 and '67 at Banaras Hindu University and Kurukshetra University in India. And on the weekends, a couple of times I went up to Nepal, and I wandered into. I was there mostly to be there early in the morning to see the sunrise over the Himalayas, and highest point off of the surface of the planet Earth. And I went into this place called the Park Hotel, and there were people from all over the world there. And yeah, I was teaching mathematics, so that was a kind of a universal language. That was down at Benares in the university, Kurukshetra University. But up there, what to do with all these? And so we found I didn't have a clarinet with me, but they brought an Albert system clarinet in, which I learned how to play in a few minutes, as opposed to the BAME system, which is what most American clarinetists play. Mm-hmm. And so we started playing. We were playing a Viennese waltz, and the Prime Minister of Bhutan was there with his Israeli wife in a sari, and they were. And his bodyguards were around him, so they followed them around the floor. We played Beatles tunes, we played Viennese waltz, we played even some rock and roll. This was in the mid '60s. That was an unusual setting.
Yeah, that sounds like an exciting time. And all that was improvisation, right? No.
Yes, no improvisation across cultures and across keys and across fingering on the clarinet, all of it, yes.
Yeah, maybe just, you might, what's the story with improvisation? What do you need to know in order to be able to improvise?
That's a great question. I wish I had an answer for that. I can tell you, though, improvisation in a free and democratic society like the United States of America is great. It's what it's all about. I think that's why New Orleans is an intersection of so many different cultures, and there are you have the freedom to go wherever you want to go in terms of usual musical forms. And I find that people who have been classically trained on instruments they have so much to draw from when they dare to improvise. I love playing with Anne for that reason, I think. So that's there's nothing like the United States of America for improvisation.
Improvisation, yeah. Is there another song that you thought, if I get this chance to play my clarinet and we get it on the air, that you would want to play for us? Or a story that you'd like to tell?
Well, I mentioned New Orleans. And do you know what it means to miss New Orleans? It's one of my favorite tunes.
Try that. Go time.
Mentioned improvisation. I thought, all right, I'll put a little Gershwin in that and a couple of other things.
That's great. That's great. Well, it's been a lot of fun.
It has for me.
And I really thoroughly enjoyed this. This is how I'd like to start my day every day, to tell you the truth.
Me too. But there's a way I'd rather start it. Okay. Rather than sitting and talking with you, I'd rather be playing music with your dear wife.
Well, she enjoys that too. That would be. And I'm so glad those opportunities come, and more to come.
Thank you for what you're doing with storytelling too. I think that's glorious.
Yeah, thank you. I think why don't you just kind of play us out?
All right.
And people out there who have had a chance to see this opportunity this morning, what a great world we live in, with music and with stories. May your stories be blessed, because your story is special today.